Live from the Ram Cave, I'm Joe Trozian, and this is RamView, I'm sorry, whoa. Can we try that again? No, I'm just going to keep going. Okay, this is RamView. It's live from the Ram Cave, the August 5th, 2022 edition. And I had a little cough here because I actually got somebody in the room with me, and it was a little weird to look up and see somebody in the room with me, which generally I work alone, and they're not a producer, and I've always wanted a producer, and if you can get me a producer, that would be great. That's my condition for a contract. But hey, we are talking football the very next day after the Hall of Fame game. But before we get into that, we want to say happy birthday to Ram legend Roman Gabriel, who turns 82 today. And so we want to do a little revisit of Roman Gabriel. And I thought the Hall of Fame game really provided room for this revisit because there's a little push there to raise some awareness for Roman Gabriel for the Hall of Fame. And in fact, it's a Twitter handle, and I don't know if it's his son or somebody that has started it. And I thought, yeah, that's cool. You know, I think people are going to label him in the Hall of the Very Good, but maybe Gabriel deserves a revisit, a serious revisit. Not just a nostalgic one for Ram fans. So he turns 82 today. The Rams drafted Gabriel second overall in 1962 out of NC State, Wolfpack. At that time, 6'5", 225. I'm trying to think of a quarterback that I've looked at in the past that was that big. And maybe Tobin Rote. But Gabriel was a tank with a cannon for an arm. And in fact, I heard stories early on that he threw without a lot of touch. He just threw so hard. But his 11 seasons with the Rams and 5 with the Eagles was not during the passing period of the NFL, right? So I did a little piece on how he kind of was looking to re-sign with the Rams in 78 when George Allen returned, and then it never really came to fruition. But from 62 to 77, that was not the passing period. All the rules were laxed in 78, and by that time, Gabriel was 39, and his career was pretty much over. But in a period where numbers and touchdown to interception ratios were viewed differently, Gabriel had 201 touchdown passes to 149 interceptions. That's excellent for the era he played in. He threw for just under 30,000 yards, very competent for the time he played. He also ran for 30 touchdowns. Because this guy was a beast. And when you look back, of course, the Rams didn't have any success until George Allen got there. And then, you know, you get that success, and the next thing you know, you got to get past Vince Lombardi's Packers, right? So you figure 66, 67, you got to get past Lombardi's Packers. You got the Colts in 68, which is a legendary team that eventually lost Super Bowl III. And then there was the loss to the Vikings in 69, and that was the last playoff game for Gabriel and that great Rams. But he was MVP that year, Player of the Year that year in the NFL. And then by 72, he was wearing down. He was getting beat up. He had a collapsed lung, I believe. And then the Rams wisely made a great deal in sending him to Philly and got Harold Jackson and some other picks and such. And then he kind of falls off the radar, even though he had some really good years. He was comeback player of the year for the Eagles in 73, and he could still throw the ball. You know, he was throwing the ball at Charlie Young, he was throwing the ball at Harold Carmichael, and caused a little bit of a brief Eagle insurgence there before Dick Vermeil showed up and turned things around. And so I was thinking about Gabriel, and I would love to see him in the Hall of Fame. I thought that before, but I always thought he was going to get stuck in the Hall of the Very Good. But I really think he deserves a revisit because when I think of the Hall of Fame, you're generally thought, you know, the thought is true. When you hear a player's name, you think, oh, he's a Hall of Famer. So I'm looking at this class that went in, and we've had months to think about this. I liked Sam Mills, okay? It was a shame Sam Mills died young. Sam Mills was an overachiever, started in the USFL, the real USFL. And but Hall of Famer, no, I never thought of him as Hall of Famer. You know, between Pat Swilling and Ricky Jackson and the other guys on that roster for the Saints, I thought he was a good linebacker. I didn't think he was great. Leroy Butler. Now, Leroy Butler was very good, but I just didn't pop Hall of Fame. Tony Baselli, I thought, Tony Baselli didn't play long enough, even though his career was outstanding when he did play. Richard Seymour, No, I think Richard Seymour is another guy if he doesn't land in New England. And so I don't think of those guys as Hall of Fame. Now, Cliff Branch, I did think Hall of Fame when I heard him. In fact, I was kind of wondering why it took Cliff Branch so long, because Cliff Branch was a guy that you had the game plan for, and he thrived pre-78 and post-78. And that's really the demarcation line for NFL passing. 78 is when the rules were really relaxed. And Branch excelled before and after. And then there was Bryant Young, who I'm going to get to in a minute. And Bryant Young, 14 years. I did think of him as a Hall of Famer. But with all that said, I think Gabriel needs a real legitimate revisit. And that guy probably deserves to be in the Hall. And so I'll honk that for him. Speaking of Hall of Famers, Dick Vermeil, which was a given. You knew Vermeil was going to get in because of his salvage jobs in so many spots. But I loved how, you linked Dick Vermeil and Kurt Warner and Dick Vermeil. But what I absolutely loved about Vermeil's interview with Melissa Stark on the sideline last night, I watched the game. I had to delay and watch the Mets beat the Braves, just watch the highlights of that game because I watched the NFL game. Dick Vermeil was very careful to mention London Fletcher and all the work London Fletcher did and how London Fletcher came out of nowhere, out of John Carroll. Played 16 seasons, Hall of Fame, London Fletcher, Hall of Fame. And I've made that argument before, but good for Dick Vermeil for mentioning London Fletcher. In regards to Bryant Young, what I always remembered about Bryant Young was I was watching the draft when the Rams made a draft day trade with the 49ers in 1994. And what that trade did was it allowed the 49ers, a division rival, to move from 15 to 7. Now, who deals with their division rival who's kicking their butt left and right? Who makes a deal that allows them to get what they want by moving from 15 to 7? Well, Georgia, John Shaw, and the Rams, of course. Just another reason to really despise that group, right? So the 49ers move from 15 to 7. The Rams get in return the 15th overall, the 56th overall, and the 100th overall. Now, Wayne Gandy was drafted at 15th overall. Gandy was serviceable, but he wasn't Bryant Young. And then the team whiffed on the other draft picks. And we can get into who, Brad Otis or Ernest Jones, whiff. But meanwhile, the 49ers got a Hall of Famer. And it echoed another interdivision trade the Rams made with the 49ers in 1986. So the 49ers get an All-Pro, a Hall of Fame DT in Bryant Young. In 1986, they get a Hall of Fame beast by the name of Charles Haley, because the Rams, within the division on draft day in 86, sent Jeff Kemp and the fourth round, 96th overall, and the fourth round, 101st overall to the 49ers to move up to the 71st spot in the third round. All right. Jeff Kemp, 96 overall, 101 overall, to move up to the 71st overall in the 1986 draft to take Hugh Millen, John Shaw, Georgia Frontiere, and even John Robinson. You should have had the NAD to step up and say something's wrong here. Hugh Millen, gross. Okay. And of course, the 49ers, they get Jeff Kemp, who gives them some snaps when Montana's back goes out. But with that 96th overall pick, they draft Charles Haley, Hall of Famer, and consistent offensive lineman Steve Wallace, who was their starting guard for a lot of those Super Bowls in the late 80s and early 90s. So this was what the Rams do. You don't trade within the division with your arch rival. Call me crazy. Moving on to the game, I saw I'm not even a Raider fan. I am more of a Raider fan now that they're in Las Vegas. And there's something about the silver and black, right? I don't like the silver and white, but I like the silver and black. And there's just something about it that, I don't know why, but I see names and numbers and I link them up to the history. And again, I'm not a Raider fan, right? I see Jarrett Stidham coming out wearing number 3, and I see Darryl LaMonica. And I caught the very tail end of LaMonica's career. I see Chase Garber come out wearing number 15, and I see Mike Ray, former USC quarterback. And Ray had a really nice stretch for the Super Bowl Raiders in '76 when Stabler was out. You ought to see it. I think there was an article on him in Sports Illustrated called Ray of Sunshine. When I see Josh Jacobs coming out wearing number 28, I see Clarence Davis, underrated USC tailback, and I wondered why Jacobs in the first 2 series got 7 touches in a preseason game. Now, I know the Raiders didn't pick up his extension, but you don't give Josh Jacobs, who's going to get a lot of touches in the season. Why do you give him 7 touches in a preseason game? I thought it was crazy. I also was looking at knowing this is a preseason game, and there's always that Raider fan that does the silver paint and the blackface and the swords and the spikes and everything. I just can't imagine that guy, flying into Ohio, driving to Canton, which I've been to. It's used to. I don't know where it's at now. I haven't been there for about 15 years. It was this weird, wonderful NFL place in this neighborhood. In fact, I think we were parked on somebody's grass when I actually went there, and it's just within the neighborhood, and it's not in the metropolis. And I went to the NHL Hall of Fame in Toronto, and it was part of a mall. Anyway, I digress. But you think of the Raider fan that flies into Ohio, drives down to Canton, gets a Motel 8, Motel 6, a Best Eastern if they don't have a Best Western there. He puts on all of his gear to go watch Jarrett Stidham, right? And Nick Mullins. And I don't know. I thought it was kind of funny. And then knowing, oh, crud, I got to fly back out because I got to be at work on Monday. I don't know. Call me crazy. Trayvon Walker got a roughing the passer call on his first play of his career. The officials were in mid-season for him because it was a horrible call. Good for Trayvon Walker. I think people worried about him being one of those workout beasts that moves up in the combine and actually can't play football. I think Trayvon Walker can play football, and I think he seems like a Swiss Army knife on defense. It'll be fun to watch him. Getting back to the Rams, Matthew Stafford has tendonitis. Translation, I think he's going to be okay, and I think they're just going to ease him in. I'm not worried about it. Just not worried about it. When they sign Blake Bortles, then I'll worry about it, okay? I caught the Allen Robinson interview yesterday, and I thought in contrast to Terrell Lewis's the day before, I thought it was interesting. I talked about Terrell Lewis, who knee injury didn't dress out for the Super Bowl or much of the postseason. I don't think he dressed out for the postseason at all. And how he was nice guy, smart guy, but he didn't seem like he had a chip. And it kind of just threw me off a little bit. I watched Allen Robinson's interview yesterday with the media. No smiles. His arms are folded, and he has a bit of a chip. Not that he was rude to anybody. I don't know how you can't be rude when you hear all these questions just repeated over and over again. And how many times you have to hear the same answer given over and over again that, it's process, working hard, just keep grinding, keep chipping away, blah, blah, blah. But Robinson sounded like he was going on 29 in a few weeks and still hasn't collected a ring. And that's his case. He's going to be 29 August 24th, and he hasn't collected a ring yet. He sounded like a guy that's all business. He sounded like a guy with a bit of a chip. And I think that really bodes well. That's the kind of guy you want, right? Besides all the background investigation the Rams probably did to make sure he's who he is, who they're discovering that he is, a hard worker and a quality dude. He's also kind of got an edge to him because he wants his bling, he wants his ring, right? Jacob Harris going out with a groin strain, expected to miss a couple weeks, and he missed all of last season. Well, most of last season after he went out. I think that was a busted arm. Wasn't he went out for last year? And so you begin to see a certain pattern maybe developing with the former Nelson Spruce Award winner. And I say Nelson Spruce because he was the darling down by the goal line last year, and people were excited about him. And then you didn't see anything out of the season. And now, at a time where Van Jefferson is hurt, recovering, and he's out, and it's a time to make an impact and gain some traction in the wide receiver room. The snaps that were being divvied up between Jacob Harris and Skoranek and Tutu Atwell now are going to Tutu Atwell and Skoranek, and Harris is on the sideline for a couple weeks. And I've pulled a groin muscle playing basketball. It's not pleasant, and it takes time. The one thing I was surprised when hearing McVay's interview yesterday is McVay said that Brandon Powell, the kick returner, was actually getting some snaps at receiver. I did not know he was in the equation there. but good for him. He's got a lot of speed, and if that can make him a little more viable, if he can actually play some receiver as opposed to just being a kick returner or punt returner or both, because every roster spot matters. Every roster spot matters, and the Rams, interesting. The one thing I was noticing, well, I didn't notice it, everyone else noticed it too, was last year they kept 3 quarterbacks on the roster. They didn't want to put Bryce Perkins through waivers, where you have to release and put him on the practice squad, because they thought they'd lose him. And you wonder what's going to happen this year. Will they still keep 3 quarterbacks on the roster? I tend to believe they will. And that's just going to be interesting stuff. You got Kyron Williams from Notre Dame. They're not going to get rid of him. He's a little injured right now. You're going to keep Darrell Henderson. You're going to keep Cam Akers. Where does that fit Jake Funk in there? But Jake Funk was drafted to be the next Chase Reynolds. And so all these roster spots, they mean something. And can you do something multiple? And that's where Brandon Powell might have more value. And if he can be a little more multiple and actually take some snaps at receiver instead of being a one-trick pony as a kick returner and punt returner. All right. Hey, I got that in. We're going to the 16.5-minute mark. I thank you for those that send me stuff and say, hello, how do you do? But I need your clicks. I need your likes. I need your comments as we press on towards the football season. And I'm Joe Tarosian, and you can read me at joetarosian.com. My books are on Amazon. I'm also pastor of a small church in Burbank. My Twitter handle is JoeT13B at Yahoo, JoeT13B at Twitter, JoeT13B at Instagram as well. So cool. Please hit like and subscribe as we continue to talk Rams football. Gary Brown, hope everything's going well with you today and your surgery. Tim Burns, help you with your recovery. And Rob Swords, Steeler fan. Don't be so giddy, because I think Deshaun Watson's going to appeal and end up playing. Oh, man, I went 2 episodes without Deshaun Watson or Kyler Murray talk. Oh, there we go. All right, I'm Joe Tarosian. This is RamView. I will see you on Monday. God bless.